first things first, if you guys ever been to the art store and you went down the oil painting aisle, you probably had like a heart attack because there's so many chemicals and you think you're in like a little lab. The chemicals do, you're in the, the chemicals do two things. Right? The mediums or the solvents, they either thin down the paint, speed up the drying, change the viscosity of the paint, but it only does two things. Make it dry faster or slower, or change the thickness of the paint. Okay, it's not like acrylic where water does everything. All right. Anybody know what the difference is between acrylic and oil paint?
Acrylic dries faster.
Why? Why does it dry faster?
It evaporates. In the air.
Okay, so the water is made with polymers, pigment, and the water leaves and the polymers get tighter. When it gets tighter, the pigments get closer together, it gets darker. Big problem if you're doing portrait painting or any type of painting where you want to match color, because you got to match it lighter when it's wet. Oil, how does it dry? Process of oxidation. No oil leaves the air. There's no oil going in the air. It just gets hard like a crystal. Right? So the oil, if the pigments are separated, the oil will keep the pigments apart, doesn't change color, and light can get through the oil to the underpainting and bounce back out. So you do beautiful glazes with oil. If I put paint on this palette, I can come back 500 years, it'll be the same color, minding there's no good atmospheric conditions that change or pollution, right? Okay. All the paints, watercolor, tempera, acrylic, they're all the same thing. What do they have? Is pigment. Right? That's why the masters used to do it. Can you imagine? You'd have to have like a little assistant there saying, Giuseppe, make me some Marzian. What's the matter? Alright? And all it is mixing with oil. Linseed oil. Alright? Now, watercolor is made with gum arabic and pigment. Acrylic is made with a polymer and pigment. And oil is oil and pigment, and tempera is egg and pigment. So they're all the same except for the binder. The binder is what makes the properties change. And oil paint came out, it started out in the Gothic, more or less in the late Gothic period, for its glazing on top of the tempera paintings. So a lot of the early paintings were done in a grisaille, where they would do these paintings in grayscale, and then there we have some paint. Right? Pretty cool. And that will dry just like regular paint. But if we had to mix our paint every time, it would be pain in the butt. Now we're lucky we have ready-made tubes. Okay? There's oil in here. There's already linseed oil in here. I don't paint with linseed oil because there's already linseed oil in my paint. What I use and what we're going to use today is liquid, which will facilitate the drying time. It'll make it flow. I tried everything. Here's other Gallic, Neo, Megalith. I use copal. Copal medium is made from a resin. It's like what the masters use, and I wanted to be a master when I was younger, and my paintings, still look the same. And the fumes were really, really bad. So this is a low odor. This is probably the most popular one right now. All right. So I don't know if anybody ever used liquid. Okay. So liquid's great. I mean, you can make the paint dry tomorrow if you use the right amount. Okay. Now, there are certain brands of paint. There are your Cheapy Cheap, which is the Soho. Then you have, what's pretty good is Utrecht is not bad, but I think Utrecht is going out of it. I don't know what they're doing. Blick took over and that was it. Mussini is good, but the best of the best, if you want to spend all your money like I do, is Old Holland. Okay, Old Holland is the purest pigment you can buy on the market. It's what Van Gogh used. Come on, Van Gogh used it, right? Sennelier is also good. Sennelier is what Picasso used to use. That's a really good paint. And what you're buying is a high pigment concentration in the tube and no fillers. Most of the high-end paints don't have any fillers. And by fillers, I mean wax. So when you buy like a Winton student grade, you're saving money because you're buying half a tube of wax. So you're really not saving. What I do is I buy very expensive paints that I only use for glazing. So later on I'll glaze the colors because they're so strong. Some of these you can't use to paint direct painting because they're almost too intense. Like you use a little bit of this and your whole palette turns orange because it's so much pigment. So you got to be careful. All right. As a solvent, there's turpentine. Right? Real turpentine, not turpenoid. smells like my childhood. My mom used to send me to art school, and this is what it smelled like all the time. So every once in a while I take a whiff. It smells like a Christmas tree. But this is what you're supposed to use to paint. Terpenoid is not supposed to be used painting. Terpenoid is a mineral spirits and actually dissolves oil. And in doing so, it removes the glue that's holding the paint to your paint canvas, right? So we shouldn't be using that. So for those who are going to make the segue today from acrylic into oil paint, all you need to know is that what you used to use to thin down your paint and mix your paint, we're going to be using liquid. Okay, to keep the classrooms clean and not have so many solvents, I forbid linseed oil and turpentine and anything from the classroom. We clean our brushes with palm olive soap and Thousand Outfit soap that you get for 99 cents at Publix. Okay, this way we don't have a lot of smell, and the drawing teacher doesn't get mad at the painting teacher, or the ceramic teacher doesn't get mad at the painting teacher. You never know. All right, any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
What exactly is liquid? I've heard of it.
It's a synthetic.
It's actually-
It's which is good because it's chemically sound. If you get like a resin, you could get part of that resin because it's natural and organic. It could be, part of it can't be. Something could be in it that's not so good. This is made in a lab. It's like an alkyd.
Do you know if it can be mixed with water-soluble oils? Because I use water-soluble.
I am against water soluble.
Because?
I'll tell you why. Because the universe did not want oil and water to mix, and I'm there with them. Imagine what they probably did. They go into the molecules of the oil and they weaken it just so that water can break it down. I don't want to wait and find out that those paintings are going to fall apart in a couple of years. I just think.
But the same thing could be true for the liquid.
Well,
it's a
water and oil. And the pigment concentrations are not as strong. I mean, it's up to you. I don't know what why would you want to do that? The benefit of it. People think it's safer, but.
Well, because you don't have to deal with the turpentine. Right?
I don't deal with turpentine.
Sounds like you're not.
I don't know. When I teach painting at the Art Institute, I teach painting at Broward, and I have workshops. And everybody's confused, like, how am I going to clean my brushes? One thing, you get more brushes. So you have if you have a blue brush, you just leave it and get out another brush instead of changing brushes every 5 minutes. But I hate when they take the brush, put it in the turp, and go paint, and it starts breaking down the paint on the canvas. So it's better to do it this way. And we clean with palm olive. And all my brushes, if you see how shiny they are, I take care of my brushes. I'm a little obsessive, I know. But I even leave a little palm olive in the brush itself to kind of dry out so it stays close together. All right. You don't need it. You don't need turpentine. You don't. My wife paints with turpentine, but you don't really need it. All right. The water soluble, I don't believe is. I wouldn't use it. I don't understand why people use it. I think they think it's safer, but what's the oil, linseed oil, same as flax. It's made from flaxseed. People eat flaxseed. Linseed oil. I mean, I wouldn't eat this, of course, but. It's not a.
I've just known people who have become sensitive to it, and
they're probably sensitive to the solvents, like turpentine. What I don't like about terpenoid is that you can't smell it. You have no idea how much you're breathing in, right? This whole room could be filled with terpenoid, and when you're breathing it in, I don't smell anything. This, at least I know, if it's strong smell, I know I'm breathing in a lot. So I rarely use it. I'll do that if I want to do a wash in the background. Because it's sticky, it's a good foundation.
The consistency of what you mix there, is it like peanut butter or toothpaste? What is it?
Come on here. Come on here. Feel it. Smush it around, don't be afraid. And you can make it thinner or thicker. Okay. Alright? Alright. So, again, all paints have material, pigment. You can make your own paint if you wish, but it's kind of like time consuming for the way we live. We just have a little bit of time to paint when we can. And let me just lower that music a little bit. It's very dramatic for what I'm saying.
Very serious.
Yeah, something important. All right. Now, talk about brushes. There are a myriad of styles of brushes. You have your flats, your rounds, your filberts. Your brights, which are my favorite. Let me show you here. These are brights. I like these jerk brushes. I used to buy mongoose brushes. figured, well, you know, it's natural hair. Then there's like a mongoose that looks like me somewhere. They pluck the hair out. I felt so bad for the little guy. And I mean, my paintings still look the same, you know. The synthetics have gone a long way. You're supposed to, that was acrylic brushes. You can't use them in oil. But they made so well now, I use them in oil and they're great. They're really made well. So there's no reason to get like a animal hair brush. I think it's kind of silly.
What brand is that?
These are all Utrecht brushes.
Utrecht.
Yeah.
They come with the red stripe? That's urgent?
Yeah, you can actually tell the filbert, you can tell the rounds from the coloring.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is a flat, right? A flat, how you doing? A flat brush. Obviously it's flat at the head, but it's longer. All right, a bright is usually square, as long as it is wide. And you probably think, oh, who cares about that? But when you're painting oil paint, you're far back on the brush. So you're painting back here, okay? And this is what hits the canvas. So my movement here takes longer to react than it would with a bright. So I just typically like the spring of a bright, meaning that the brush will spring as I move it. The flats are just longer brushes, so as I move coming back down, the brush is still coming back up. Rounds are good for details, making points. Filberts are good for blending. A filbert looks like a round from one side, and it's kind of rounded edge, but flat and narrow. You have to keep in mind, like when a filbert comes up off the canvas, the brush mark is going to go in like this, like a point, because as you pull up, the last thing is touching is this tangent here, where a flat, all bristles leave at the same time. So you get a softer blend. And that's, you know, there's a reasoning for these brushes. There are short handle brushes and long handle brushes. The short handle brushes are for people with long arms. No, I'm joking. It's watercolor. Watercolor is, it's a tabletop painting style. So you're down like this because of water. You know, it's going to drip if it's on an easel. But being that you do an easel painting, you're farther away. And you want to be able to see. You don't want to choke up on the brush unless you're doing details. Most of the time you want to be back here. Okay? Pinky out, because it looks really cool. So if you guys get into painting, you should get one of these to really protect your painting brushes. I get so mad when I see people with their brushes caked with paint, neglected, or worse, left in a turpentine jar, and they're all making left-hand turns. This is a liner brush. This is for making, you know, if you have to make a straight line. Right, all right, I'm gonna do something. See that, right? All right, so you come down here. Sure. Anybody know what this was called? Mahl stick. Where do you buy one of these? At the mall. This one I made. You can go to Utrecht and buy like a $25 one, which is crazy. Or you can go to Walmart and get like a $1.25 stick and buy like 3 of these balls in the pet section and stick it on there, and you're done. You got a mahl stick. All the mahl, and make sure it's straight. Make sure you look down the pipe here and make sure it's straight. So a mahl stick is really, really handy. Like say you're going to do a line like this, you put your finger here, and this metal part is called the ferrule. You leave that against the mahl stick and you bring down. And as you're doing it, you turn and back and forth. The longer brush holds more pigment, so it's actually this, you know, the capillary action is going to pull the paint down the brush. All right. So the reason why we have a mahl stick is that if I'm painting like an eye and the cheek is wet, I don't have to, you know, add 18 Red Bulls before I got here and shake it. I won't be able to get a good accurate draw. So if I put the mahl stick here, it's leaning on the edge. I can put my finger on the easel. I can rest my hand comfortably and draw or paint. Okay? All right. Any questions so far? We're all excited. No? You have a question? All right. Let's see if I covered everything. Oh, here's the palette paper. Again, we can do your paint on here if it's easier for you, because we don't have taboret tables here. Or you can pull one of those horses out and put your palette on there. Just please don't get paint on the horses, so they get very angry. And we'll talk about the colors. So what do we have here? All right, for starters, what we're going to do before, and then we'll take a break after we do this. Everybody will take the umber here. Here we go, raw umber. A little raw umber, a little burnt sienna, and we'll do a block end of the face. Now, when someone comes in a room and you're not looking at them, you have your peripheral vision, you can kind of tell with the silhouette who that is. Right, that's what you want to capture first. That's like the kind of the general form of the person. So you don't want to put the details in. All right. Students always do this, For some reason, when they were young, they can do it right? When you're a young kid and I say draw a tree, the kid draws the tree and then he puts the apples. And in Broward College, we have a figure up there and they'll start drawing the eyeball and that's the body, so the legs are off, the arm is off. You got to get the general form. The best way to think about it is think of sculpture. My drawing teacher was a sculptor, so I was taught more or less in that ideology of sculpture and form. So if you can think of whatever you're drawing or painting as a mass shape first, and then carve in with your drawing or pencil, and the same thing here with El Primo. It's the same concept. Okay, you do not want to draw eyeballs first. Okay. Now, if you're doing like a portrait of somebody, that is the most important part, the eyes, because when you talk to an animal, like your dog, you connect with the eyes, even humans, right? Everything is we connect. We communicate through our eyes. We don't communicate through our noses. What's up? Right? People, it's weird if you stare at the ear. We do. Right? So it's always the eyes. And eyes. Once you get the eyes of someone, you kind of get their soul, the windows of the soul, so to speak. Okay. All right. So everybody, grab some paint, grab some brushes, grab some Q-tips. First thing we're going to do, make it so everybody go.
Are we putting a piece of
Yeah, it's right
stuff
there.
on it? Oh,
Yeah, this styrofoam, it's for
Support.
your... A little bit more music there. Dramatic music. You gonna paint? I have no luck with computers. I'm gonna play it on my phone.
Might be an older version of Firefox. You might want to use
Something wrong with Firefox because I have the same thing in my house.
yeah, white. Do something I don't want it to do.
Just the umber and burnt sienna for now.
You need a strong man
Yeah,
here.
good. Is it strong man?
A strong anyone, okay. Sorry, didn't mean to be that way.
not a whole lot. So you can always get more.
It's pretty hard to crack into those, isn't it? Yeah, right.
Probably have those dark colors.
Which place did you say?
I got it. Sort of.
Alright guys, keep in mind that this is oil paint. This is not acrylic. You do not need a lot of paint. But there's no water to evaporate, right? So
Which colors did you want everyone?
Burnt sienna and raw.
Yeah, I chose umber.
The palette paper is under this weird method.
Take that thing. Press the hard pad. It's hard.
It's right here. Excuse me.
You don't have to twist. You got to press.
Oh, is that the take water.
Cadmium yellow, nah, I don't think so. Anybody see cadmium red?
You only need 2 colors. Unless you're,
Guys, put some liquid on your canvas.
and you need a canvas.
Okay then. 2 colors. Any 2 colors?
Raw umber and burnt sienna.
Sienna, where's this?
Oh, we only
got that
need the
one.
raw umber and the burnt sienna.
Yeah, but you're good.
There it is.
And how about liquid and some of that? This is just for our under.
Not now.
Where is the?
I've never used this, so this is very curious for me. Myself.
Laundry soap. Okay. It's Walmart. It works. Yeah. It works on
It
paint.
worked for about 30 years and then it,
Well, it works really good with paint, because it breaks the oil down. All right, let me show you something here. Can I use you as an example? All right. For the future, something I neglected to say. All right. Here's your palette. You want to put your colors at the top of the palette, so you have this area for mixing. Okay. You want to put in some type of order. I know it's very spiritual.
recognize that?
Yeah. I'm just going to put them up here because we don't have big palettes here.
You only need the 2 colors. You're good.
Alright, so now she has all this space, okay? These are your clear, your pure pigments, mass tones. You don't want to mix this way, okay? So you want to take. You don't bring a color down. Like say I want to make this a lighter yellow. So I take something here. I'm not going to come and start adding white to this because I'm going to waste a lot of light. I don't know how strong a pigment is. So what you do is you take white first and you add the darker to the light. Right? That's just like a rule of thumb. Okay? I'm just going to use the side. We're not going to be using it. So all mixed in. First here.
You don't need white right now.
Now good? We have order now. You can do some people do like warm and cool. Some people do circles. Some people just do like, bombing. A bird went by. But we just want to have some order so when we're working we have, we have a clean area. Keep in mind, oil will go very far. When you talk about pigment, how long the pigment is, it's how you control that pigment. That's how much pigment is in here. And you're going to find this is very oily paint. Okay? It's, like I said, it's not high on the quality scale. But it's fine for us. It's fine for a demo, okay? But when you want to be in the museum, I know you're going to be the new, they're going to demand that you have better paint, okay? All right? So if you have some more, that's fine. You have order there. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, are you ready? This will be a short pose, it'll be 5 hours. Or do 45 minutes. First thing you want to do is you want to establish the shape. Okay, here's some drawing techniques that you may not have gotten before in life, and they're very academic. First off, you need to get the silhouette or the whole shape on your canvas to make sure you don't go off, right? let's say, imagine yourself, and it's okay to do this, right? It's okay to, you see that in the cartoons, right? And artists and all doing this, so there's a reason for that. Make sure your canvas has, some space there, because when the Louvre wants to frame it, they don't want to get too tight, they'll cut into the picture. And then say you want to come in right about here, right? So here's your painting, here's about center, so make sure that when you're drawing this out with paint very lightly, okay, that you have the eyes at center. Okay? How do we know what really is the center of her face if we measure? We can take our brush. Take this brush here. Okay. Let's say, let's say this is her head and this is the top of the bird. Okay? I can look here. I know the center of this brush. That's easy, right? So all I have to do is bring this to the top, one eye, and look at this at the top and this at the bottom, and I can kind of make a guess. That's where the center of this picture is going to be on that canvas. Okay? And I can do the same horizontally. Trying to make sure that we don't put it off the side. And students have two problems they have all the time: mapping, putting it in the wrong spot on the canvas with drawing paper, or proportion. They make the relationship of the objects are off. Okay? So once you have it kind of centered and you found your midpoint, you marked where to put it, then you can make little tick marks on the canvas and figure that out. All right? The other thing is sight sizing. How do I know how big the forehead is in relationship to this flower, to the head of the bird, to the shawl, whatever? I can pick something as a metric. Pick one thing in this picture that I'm going to use to measure everything else in relationship with proportion. So say I use the red flower. So I have, this is my red flower. My arm's all the way out, and I can measure with one eye. Got to use myopic vision because stereoscopic vision is going to have two images. You're going to get confused, right? And you measure down 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The third one will be the nose. So I kind of understand where the nose is going to be. Okay, let me show you again. So if I'm looking at her and I measure the flower, I go down. This is the top of the bottom of the flower now. There's 2, there's 3, 4, and I make sure that I'm on a flat plane. I don't go into space, just pointing in the root, go straight down flat. And I can do the same way, this way too. When you're really good, you don't have to do all these tools. They're kind of intuitive. But now, if you're a student, you're starting out, you're having trouble with proportion, these are great tools. Michelangelo, these are academic tools that have been going on for centuries, all right? So there's nothing wrong with this. And that's where the whole cartoon, the artist with the film comes from, all right? Once you kind of make sure that everything is right before you commit, it's like the first date, you don't want to commit right away. Okay, to know it, right? Once you do that, then you're going to do, if you want to measure an angle, how do I know this angle of her shoulder? Well, you don't have to guess. All you got to do is the clock angle. Close one eye, put your pencil or your brush, turn it to the angle, and you can relate it to a clock, which I don't, or you can just move to your canvas and say, okay, I think I have the right angle. Okay, you don't have to just go, think, believe, and get it right, right? It's called a clock angle. And the other thing is helpful is a plumb line. If you're doing her hand, and you want to see where her hand relates laterally with her face, you can use a plumb line like this and say, okay, her hand ends where her eye begins or whatever, okay? So these are vertical plumb lines, and these are horizontal plumb lines, all right? These are all tools you probably already know from drawing. If you don't, hopefully it'll be helpful for you, all right? So the key here is to get the generic form first. Don't start on the eyeball, the crow, please. Look at that silhouette, just block it in, measure it. Where does it go? Go down to the bottom of her nose. I gotta make sure that, make sure that measures up, but it's not off. This is that big and that's that big. I want to make sure that the relationships of the big forms are correct. Once you're satisfied and you've checked it over, then we start carving in like a sculptor. Okay? Then carving in, I mean pushing. By pushing, I mean dark values. So I'm going to use umber here. Okay? So the first thing we're doing is trying to block in some of those dark lights. Here, the bun, and here. This will be a little lighter. Okay? The Q-tips are to help you as you're doing this. Don't get sloppy, because you can easily get sloppy. Is to start correcting the lines. Like maybe you went too far out with the bird and you want to clean it up a little bit. You can do it a rag, but the Q-tips are really sharp and you can get in there. Okay? So you can go and grab a Q-tip if you want. Everybody ready? Excited? Yes. Nervous? Don't worry. If it doesn't look like Linda, she'll get very angry. She'll get over it. You know, paint like a little
good,
kid.
yeah, I'm
Little
good.
kid at paint. Take a second to study your object. Use one eye if you have to. Remember, 2 eyes, 2 pictures, 2 different pictures, okay? So it's easier sometimes to use your strong eye and just study the form. Look at the shadows. The shadows are shapes too, and they help define the face. So don't neglect the shadows. Look at the shape of her head. Is it a square head? Kind of like football shape a little bit, right? I'm gonna pay for that. I know that's gonna come back and haunt me. Also, just take a little bit of paint. You can use a little bit of liquid. All right, don't throw a bunch of paint on there. It's gonna get sloppy. You want to have a nice resistance of the paint against the canvas, okay? And paint back here. Right? Try to paint. You can actually paint like this, or really far back. Don't paint all the way up close, okay? I'll do some of my own, then I'm going to come around and take a peek at what you guys are doing, and then we'll judge you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, ma'am?
I'm not sure if everybody else is having the same question as I am.
Sure.
Now, are we supposed to begin by anticipating what the dimensions of our figure from the top of the head? Meaning from the feather light to make the guidance of where to begin?
Add a little bit of space for the feathers, so that'll be the top,
Okay.
and the bottom could be mid-chest.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to do it longer, make a smaller head, you can include the hands, but I think for this it'd be easier just to do mid-chest. Okay?